Hey everybody, this is John from Code Planet, and today's video we're going to be looking at mean.js. So in the last couple of videos we took a look at Koa and we also took a look at Flatiron, and both of those are kind of going for this minimalist componentized thing where you kind of like a la carte grab, oh, I need an HTTP router, or I need to be able to do JSON, or I need to be able to, add some security, something like that. Mean takes kind of the opposite approach. It's meant to kind of give you all the code you need for a full, robust app, and then get out of your way. And so I would consider Mean more of a opinionated framework. I think the minimal ones often call themselves unopinionated because they don't really care how you build things, what technologies you use alongside of them, etc. And so we're going to go into the pieces that make up mean.js, but I'm just going to kind of get the install started first because it takes a little while. So going back to my terminal, the first thing that we want to do is Mean uses the Yo scaffolding tool, which is part of Yeoman. So we can check that out in a minute. But the thing we're going to do is an npm install -g yo. So while that's running, I'll go back over here, Yeoman. And for those that haven't used it, it's really, really great. It's an open source scaffolding tool, so like people that are building frameworks can also build these really nice generators to get a new app or a new controller or whatever. And so you'll see a lot of these Node frameworks have either an officially supported or an unofficially supported Yeoman package, which is really great. So that's over here at yeoman.io. Let's go back and see how this is doing. Okay, it's installing right now. So sort of while this is going, I'm going to keep checking back on it. We can talk a little bit more about what Mean is. And so Mean is just an acronym over here, and it stands for the technologies that it's using underneath, which are Mongodb, Express.js, which I covered in another video, AngularJS, and Node.js. And so the breakdown here is, Node is the server-side language that we're going to be using, so that's the back-end language. Express, as we saw in the other video, is a framework built on Node. So this is what we're going to be using for handling different routes coming in on the back end or getting data from the database, different things like that. Then MongoDB is the data store. You could kind of think about it as a replacement for MySQL, if you're familiar with that, except this is a NoSQL DB. And then AngularJS, which is a front-end JavaScript framework. So we've got kind of the database, and then we're using Node as the back-end language, and then with Node we're using Express to kind of pull from the database or write to the database, and then on the front end everything's going to be handled, all your interactions are going to be handled by AngularJS. Let's pop back over here. Alright, looks like Yeoman installed. So then the next thing I'm going to do is an npm install g, and then the specific generator that I need from Yeoman, which is generator mean.js. So that's on top of the Yo package. So the Yo package allows all sorts of scaffolding, and this one is a scaffolding program specifically made for mean.js apps. So I think you can already kind of notice that there's a lot more overhead going into this one, in the sense that the other videos that I have, it was one install command that went really fast because it's a small package, and then we can get started right away. Whereas this one, we've got, before you even get started with Mean, you got to install the generator. Before you can do that, you got to install Yeoman, all these things. So Mean takes this approach where it gives you kind of a lot of code. It's very, very heavy, but the trade-off there is that you really don't have to spend any time getting your JavaScript, your CSS, your router, security. You really don't have to spend any time doing any of that. It's all set up for you. So it's kind of a trade you'd want to consider when building an application. Okay, so we've got the generator and we've got Yeoman underneath it. So I'm going to make a new directory called mean.js. I'm going to cd in there, and then we're going to use Yeoman, and we're going to pass it this mean.js argument, which is coming from this generator that we installed. So now this is going to take a good amount of time, because what this is going to do is it's going to build out the entire application. So I'm going to let this run. We can go back and poke at the underlying technologies, and then we can come check this out in a second. So these are like we've seen on npm init. It's just asking for some things to put in the package.json. So we can call it mean video, describe it as a video about mean.js. Just leave those comma-separated words, company or author name, Code Planet, and then generate an article, CRUD. Yep, let's do that. What Angular modules do we need? Let's just go with cookies by default. All right, I'm going to go let it do its thing. So Before we get too deep into building things with Mean, we should really get to know the underlying technologies a little bit better. And so I pulled up here the websites that you'd want to take a look at. So Mongodb is a really, really nice data store, database model that we can use. It's got great documentation here on mongodb.org. And a lot of people are using this right now, so that's really great. Node.js, if you're not familiar, has its own website as well, nodejs.org. They have fantastic docs on all the underlying technologies like streams and HTTP requests, things like that. AngularJS over here, also angularjs.org. Still, I think, the most popular front-end JavaScript framework, although React has been gaining a lot of popularity lately. But definitely worth coming over and checking out angularjs.org. They also have great docs. They also have all these cool interactive things so you can kind of see how it's working as you build, like hello John or hello from Code Planet. Sweet. So they've got all these really nice things over here. And then last, Express. I have a video getting started with Express, but their documentation is really, really good too, so you can check out all these different things. Let's pop back over here and see how we're doing. So I see a lot of warnings in here. I have a really new version of NPM, so I think these warnings are just about things that are going to be deprecated in future versions. But it looks like it's still building away over here. So let's pop back over for a second and just play with the Mean documentation a little bit. So they've got these two branches going right now. I would stick, especially if you're getting started, with the stable branch. But as you can see, they've got on this sidebar here under their documentation, they've got all this information about like how they build their folder structure, how you can use NPM. Bower, for those that don't know, is like a front-end package manager like NPM but for front-end dependencies. Grunt, for those that don't know, is a task runner. I guess I can bring these up too real quick. So Bower is really cool. A lot of people are switching over to NPM these days, just kind of following the hype train. But Bower works very, very well for managing front-end packages. And then, what was the other one there? Oh yes, Grunt. And so Grunt and Gulp are two very similar things. They're very similar to like using Make or something like that if you were a C developer. But basically these task runners can do cool things like every time you load your server, they can lint your JavaScript and minify it and concatenate it. And then they can, check your node for errors, and they can run through your CSS and do all sorts of things. So you can kind of think of these as like, I'll do another video on these, but as like piling up a list of commands that you want to be run every single time you load up the server or every single time you save your file. So you can kind of automate a lot of the stuff you would normally do manually. So you can see it works with like CoffeeScript or templating languages or JS Hint, or if you use Sass, you can compile your CSS down just automatically. Let's pop back over here. Cool. So it looks like everything's done. Usually I just kind of poke around in the command line in these videos, but since there's just so much stuff here, I want to open it up in Sublime just for better viewing. So open up Sublime, come into this video here, and grab this Mean.js one. Okay, so you can see it generated a ton of stuff, and basically what's happening here is like every kind of new hot technology that you might want to use with your server is being loaded in with an appropriate file. So if you wanted to Dockerize everything, here's this like great Docker file already started that you can just, you can run everything in your Docker container. If you're using Bower to manage everything, it's got all the dependencies, Bootstrap, Angular, all that in Bower. If you're going to use Travis CI for anything, it's got this all set up. So it's really, really just a lot of bootstrapping stuff. Here's all these JS Hint rules that it recommends. Here's the tests that it does in the Grunt file. So it's running these Mocha tests, and it's running all these, let's see what else it does. It's watching all the views, watching all the CSS and JavaScript, and then it concats all the JavaScript. It lints all the CSS. It uglifies all the JavaScript. Minifies all the CSS, so it's just like all this stuff is being done for you, which to some people is really appealing, to some people is less so. So you kind of got to pick your poison with something like this. I really wanted to show Mean in contrast to the minimal frameworks. So the first thing I usually do when I get a new node project is I look at the package.json, and specifically what I'm looking for is this scripts key over here. And so the scripts key will always tell you what the author intends for you to do with their code. So you can see here if you want to start, you can just run grunt here. And so if we go back into here and we just run the word grunt, it's going to go through and it's going to do all those things that I was just covering. So you can see here it lints all the JavaScript, lints all the CSS, It's checking all this stuff about Node. It's going in the Grunt file. It's got a debugger opened up. And then it starts the application on port 3000. So if we go back to the browser here and go to localhost port 3000, we'll see that we get hit with this congrats, you've configured and run the sample application. So I think that's enough for one video. I know that's like a ton of information. I'm going to try to make separate videos diving into all the underlying technologies because they're really great, like Angular, Mongo, Express, all those things, and Grunt and Bower as well. So hopefully that was enough to get started. You know, just run those command line arguments and then you can really start poking around with you know, inside this app folder and, you know, what the controllers, models, and views look like. I'll try to get some more videos up soon on those specifically. Hope you enjoyed.